The twisted oak's roots had grown around the letters for over 2 decades, bark swelling to embrace the carved names like secrets the earth refused to forget. When Dr. Sarah Chun first spotted them during her morning jog, she thought they were natural formations until she recognized her own daughter's name etched deep into the wood. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah had moved back to Millbrook Falls after 21 years away, drawn by a teaching position at the local college and the promise of a fresh start following her divorce. The small Oregon town felt frozen in time, with its covered bridges and misty forests that seemed to whisper of older, deeper mysteries. She'd chosen the rental house on Maple Street precisely because it backed up to the wilderness preserve where she could run each morning before classes. The October air bites at her cheeks as she slows to a stop beside the massive oak tree that marks the halfway point of her usual route. Her breath forms small clouds in the crisp dawn light as she reaches for her water bottle, but something catches her eye in the gnarled root system spreading across the forest floor. There, carved with deliberate precision into the bark, just above where the roots disappear into the moss-covered earth, are names. Lots of them. Her heart skips as she kneels closer, brushing away decades of accumulated leaves and debris. Emma Chun stares back at her in letters that were once sharp but have softened with time and growth. Sarah's hands tremble as she traces her daughter's name with her fingertip. Emma would be 26 now if she were still alive. But Emma vanished when she was 5 years old, along with her entire kindergarten class during a nature walk right here in these woods. September 15th, 2003, the case that shattered this community and drove Sarah and her then-husband away in their grief. She continues brushing away the debris, revealing more names: Tyler Rodriguez, Aisha Patel, Connor Walsh. All 15. Children from Mrs. Patterson's kindergarten class at Millbrook Elementary. Every single name that disappeared that terrible autumn morning. But these carvings look fresh, not 21 years old. Sarah fumbles for her phone with shaking fingers, her academic mind warring with her mother's heart. As a forensic anthropologist, she knows she should call the police immediately. As a mother who never stopped believing her child might somehow still be alive, she stares at the evidence that someone recently took the time to carve these names into this tree. The morning fog swirls around her ankles as she photographs each name from multiple angles. The bark shows clear signs of recent carving, white wood still visible beneath some letters, sap that hasn't fully hardened in others. Someone did this within the past few months, maybe weeks. A branch snaps somewhere behind her in the deeper woods. Sarah freezes, listening. The forest has gone unnaturally quiet, no birds, no rustling of small creatures. Just the soft drip of condensation from the canopy above and the distant sound of water flowing over rocks. She turns slowly, scanning the tree line. Nothing moves, but the sensation of being watched crawls up her spine like ice water. Her phone buzzes with a text message, making her jump. It's from an unknown number. Stop looking or you'll join them. Sarah's breath catches in her throat. She spins around, searching the woods, but sees only shadows and mist. Her finger hovers over the emergency call button as another text arrives. The tree remembers everything. Some secrets should stay buried. The sound of approaching footsteps crunches through the underbrush, deliberate and unhurried. Sarah stuffs her phone in her pocket and starts running back toward town, her morning jog becoming a desperate sprint. Behind her, the footsteps don't follow, but she feels eyes tracking her movement until she breaks free of the tree line. By the time she reaches her car parked at the trailhead, her hands are shaking so badly she can barely grip her keys. She locks the doors and sits in the driver's seat, trying to process what just happened. The rational part of her mind suggests the text could be a cool prank. News of her return to Millbrook Falls had spread quickly through the small community. But the names carved in that tree, those were real, recent, deliberate. Sarah drives. Straight to the police station, her phone buzzing with more messages she's too afraid to check. Detective Ray Morrison, who'd worked the original case as a rookie officer, listens to her account with a mixture of skepticism and concern etched across his weathered face. "Dr. Chun," he says carefully, "I know this is hard, but people sometimes see what they need to see, especially on significant anniversaries." "The anniversary isn't for another month," Sarah snaps, then immediately regrets her tone. "Ray, I know what I saw. Someone carved those names recently. And these text messages." Morrison examines her phone, his expression growing more serious as he reads. "We'll send a unit out to check the tree, but Sarah... You need to consider that your return might have stirred up some painful memories for other families. Not everyone appreciated the media attention the first time around." Sarah knows he's referring to the intense scrutiny that followed Emma's disappearance. The search parties, the news crews, the amateur investigators who descended on Millbrook Falls like vultures. The town had eventually healed by collectively agreeing to let sleeping dogs lie. Her return threatens that carefully maintained peace. But as she leaves the station, one thought burns in her mind. Whoever sent those messages knows something about what happened to those children. And for the first time in 21 years, Sarah has a lead. The question is whether she's brave enough to follow it into the darkness where it leads. Detective Morrison's cruiser returns from the woods an hour later, his radio crackling with a terse message that Sarah catches from the station's parking lot. "Trees been burned. Nothing left but ash and charcoal." Sarah's stomach drops as Morrison approaches her, his face grim. "Whoever sent you those messages worked fast," he says, removing his hat to run fingers through thinning gray hair. "Professional job too used. Accelerant made sure nothing survived, but Sarah... He hesitates. There were fresh tire tracks. Multiple vehicles. This wasn't one person acting alone. The implication hangs between them like smoke. Someone had been watching her, waiting to see what she'd do with her discovery. The moment she'd involved police, they destroyed the evidence with military precision. "I want to see it," Sarah says, but Morrison shakes his head. Crime scene's still hot literally. Fire department's making sure it doesn't spread. But there's something else. He glances around the parking lot, then lowers his voice. "I pulled the original case files after you left. There's a detail we never released to the public, something that might interest you as a forensic expert." Sarah leans closer, her academic training warring with her maternal instincts. The day those kids vanished, they weren't with Mrs. Patterson. She'd called in sick that morning, food poisoning. A substitute teacher named David Kellerman took the class on that nature walk. He was the last person to see them alive. "What happened to him?" Morrison's jaw tightens. "That's the thing. David Kellerman didn't exist. The teaching credentials were forged, the references fabricated. By the time we figured that out, he'd vanished like smoke. No trace of him before he showed up in Millbrook Falls. No trail after he disappeared." Sarah feels the world tilt slightly. "You think he took them?" "We always suspected it, but without bodies or witnesses... double quotes, Morrison shrugs helplessly. "Case went cold after 6 months. No federal agencies were interested without evidence of interstate transport. Just 15 missing kids and a ghost who taught kindergarten for exactly 3 weeks." They're interrupted by Sarah's phone buzzing. Another unknown number. "Your daughter had a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on her left shoulder. Only someone who cared for her would know that." Sarah's knees buckle. Morrison catches her arm, reading the message over her shoulder. The birthmark detail was never in any police report, never mentioned in media coverage. It was something only family knew or someone who had intimate access to Emma. "That's impossible," Sarah whispers, but even as she says it, hope and terror war in her chest. "Unless... Unless what?" "Unless she's still alive." Morrison's radio crackles with another message from the scene. His face grows pale as he listens. "Dr. Chun, I think you should sit down. Just tell me." "They found something in the ashes. A metal object that survived the fire." He pauses, choosing his words carefully. "It's a locket. Child-sized, with Emma engraved on the front." Sarah's world narrows to a pinpoint. Emma's locket, the one her grandmother had given her for her 5th birthday, just weeks before she disappeared. Sarah had described it to police in excruciating detail, had clung to the hope that someone would find it and bring her baby home. "I need to see it. Sarah, I need to see it now." The drive to the burned tree site feels endless. Morrison leads her through the cordoned area where firefighters are still dampening hot spots, the acrid smell of burned wood and accelerant hanging heavy in the air. The ancient oak stands like a black skeleton against the gray sky, its massive trunk reduced to charcoal, its root system exposed and lifeless. Fire Chief Rebecca Santos approaches them, holding an evidence bag containing a small, tarnished locket. Even through the plastic, Sarah recognizes the delicate engraving her mother had commissioned, Emma in flowing script, with tiny roses carved around the border. "The heat should have destroyed this," Santos says quietly. "Silver melts at 1,763 degrees. Our investigator thinks it was placed in the ashes after the fire cooled, but before we arrived. Someone wanted you to find it." Sarah takes the bag with trembling hands. The locket is warm to the touch, and when she turns it over, her breath catches. Scratched into the back, in letters too small for the original engraving, are 3 words that weren't there 21 years ago. "Find us, Mommy." Morrison swears softly under his breath. "That's Emma's handwriting." Sarah nods, unable to speak. She recognizes the backwards E in Emma, the way her daughter used to write her mems with uneven humps. It's exactly how Emma would have written those words as a 5-year-old, but the scratches in the metal look recent, definitely not decades old. "Someone's playing games," Morrison mutters, but Sarah shakes her head. "No, someone's sending a message." She looks up from the locket, her eyes blazing with new determination. Emma learned to write her name just before she disappeared. This is her work, but it was done recently. "She's alive, Ray. They're all alive." Santos and Morrison exchange skeptical glances, but Sarah's phone buzzes again. This time it's a different kind of message, not text, but a photo. Grainy and dark, but unmistakably showing a group of young people in what appears to be a basement or underground room. Their faces are partially obscured, but Sarah's trained eye catches details. The slope of a shoulder she'd recognize anywhere. The way one person holds their left hand that Emma always did after breaking her wrist as a toddler. The message that follows makes her blood freeze. Millbrook Falls Library, Children's Section, tomorrow noon. Come alone or they disappear forever. Morrison reads it over her shoulder, his hand moving instinctively to his service weapon. "This is a trap, Sarah. You know that, right?" But Sarah is studying the photo, her forensic training kicking in despite her emotional turmoil. In the background, barely visible, is something that makes her pulse race. A poster on the wall showing the periodic table of elements, but it's an old version, one that doesn't include elements discovered after 1999. "Whoever took this photo," she says slowly, "they're somewhere that hasn't been updated in 25 years. Somewhere isolated. Somewhere they've been keeping those children all this time. The implications are staggering. If Emma and the others are alive, if they've been captive for over 2 decades, then the David Kellerman who took them has been running something far more complex than a simple kidnapping. Something that requires long-term planning, significant resources, and most chillingly, a reason to keep the children alive all these years." Sarah looks back at the burned remains of the tree that had held all their names, then at the locket that somehow found its way back to her after 21 years. Someone is orchestrating this reunion, leading her step by step toward a truth that the town of Millbrook Falls has spent 2 decades trying to forget. The question is whether that someone wants to reunite her with her daughter or finish what they started all those years ago. The Millbrook Falls Library sits on Main Street like a brick fortress of knowledge, its Gothic windows casting long shadows across the children's reading area where Sarah arrives 15 minutes early. She's positioned herself behind the tall biography stacks, where she can observe the entire children's section while remaining partially hidden, Morrison's backup plan echoing in her head. Give us 30 seconds after any contact, then we move in. But as noon approaches, the library falls unnaturally quiet. The usual afternoon crowd of mothers with toddlers has vanished, leaving only the elderly librarian, Mrs. Hendricks, who keeps glancing nervously at the clock. Even the children's area, normally filled with bright laughter and rustling picture books, feels hollow and expectant. Sarah's phone remains silent. At 12:03, Mrs. Hendricks approaches the children's section, her sensible shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. She's carrying a single book, The Secret Garden, its green cover faded with age. Dr. Chun? Her voice is barely above a whisper. I was asked to give this to you. Sarah emerges from behind the stacks, her heart hammering. Mrs. Hendricks has worked at this library for 40 years, has known Sarah since she was a child checking out Nancy Drew mysteries. The elderly woman's hands shake as she extends the book. Who asked you to give this to me? A young woman. Early 20s maybe. She knew you'd be here. Mrs. Hendricks glances around nervously. Dr. Chun, I think she looked familiar. Like someone I used to know. Sarah takes the book, immediately noticing it's been hollowed out. Inside, nestled in the cut pages, is a small digital device, a GPS unit, with coordinates already programmed in. A note in careful handwriting reads, "The garden is real, but the secret is underground. Come to these coordinates at sunset, alone." The handwriting is mature, practiced, but Sarah recognizes something in the careful loops and precise spacing. It's how Emma's writing might have evolved over 21 years. Mrs. Hendricks, this young woman, what did she look like? The librarian's eyes fill with tears. She had Emma's smile, dear. That same little dimple on the left side, but her eyes. She shudders. Her eyes were old, too old for her face. Sarah checks the GPS coordinates on her phone. They point to a location deep in the forest preserve, nearly 5 miles from where she found the carved tree. An area that was thoroughly searched in 2003 but yielded nothing. She's about to leave when Mrs. Hendricks catches her arm. There's something else. The young woman, she left this too. She presses a small object into Sarah's palm, a silver bracelet with tiny charms hanging from it. She said her mommy would remember it. Sarah's breath catches. The bracelet is one she made for Emma in a jewelry-making class at the community center, just weeks before the disappearance. Each charm represents something Emma loved: a tiny butterfly, a crescent moon, a miniature book. But there are new charms too, ones that weren't there 21 years ago. A small tree, a graduation cap, and most unsettling of all, a tiny underground symbol that looks like a bunker. As Sarah leaves the library, Morrison falls into step beside her, having watched the entire exchange from across the street. Tell me you're not thinking of going to those coordinates alone. If I don't, they'll disappear again. You know that. If you do, you might disappear too. Morrison stops walking, forcing Sarah to face him. Whatever happened to those kids, whoever's been keeping them? This isn't some reunion story. Sarah, this is about power and control. People don't hold children captive for 2 decades out of kindness. But Sarah is studying the new charms on Emma's bracelet, her forensic mind cataloging details. The craftsmanship is precise, professional. The metals match perfectly despite being added years apart. Someone has been maintaining this bracelet, adding to it as Emma grew up. Someone who cared enough to preserve it as a link to her past while documenting her present. "Look at this," she says, showing Morrison the graduation cap charm. "This was made recently, you can tell by the color of the metal." Emma would be 26 now, old enough to have graduated from college. Someone's been documenting milestones. Morrison examines the bracelet with a detective's eye. Or someone wants you to think they have. "Sarah, this could all be an elaborate hoax. Someone with access to the old case files. Someone who knows intimate details about Emma's life." Sarah's phone buzzes with a message from the same unknown. "Number: the trees have eyes and the ground has ears. Your police friends are making noise that travels far underground. Some gardens require pruning." Both Sarah and Morrison scan the area, but the main street appears normal shoppers. Traffic, the everyday rhythm of small-town life. Yet the message implies they're being watched, that their every move is being monitored and reported. Another message follows immediately. "Emma asks why you moved away, why you stopped looking for her. She's been waiting for you to come home." Sarah's knees nearly buckle. The psychological manipulation is masterful and cruel, playing on the guilt she's carried for 21 years, the guilt of leaving Millbrook Falls, of building a new life, of sometimes going entire days without thinking about her missing daughter. "They know about the divorce," she realizes aloud. "They know I left town, know I remarried and divorced. They've been watching me all these years." Morrison's radio crackles with a message from the station. His face goes pale as he listens. "Sarah, we need to get back to headquarters now." "What's wrong?" "They found something at your rental house. Someone's been inside." The drive back to Maple Street feels surreal. Police cars line the normally quiet residential street, their red and blue lights painting the afternoon in emergency. Colors. Sarah's landlord, Mr. Peterson, stands on his porch looking shaken, while crime scene techs move in and out of her house carrying evidence bags. Detective Lisa Park approaches them as they arrive. "No signs of forced entry," she reports. "Whoever was inside had keys or knew how to pick locks professionally. They didn't take anything, but they left something behind." Park leads them into Sarah's bedroom, where the contents of every box she'd brought from California have been carefully arranged on the floor. Photos of Emma at various ages, school reports, artwork, favorite toys, everything Sarah had kept to remember her daughter. But it's not random. The items are arranged in chronological order, creating a timeline of Emma's short life. At the end of the timeline, placed carefully on Sarah's pillow, are 3 items that don't belong to her. A recent photograph showing a young woman who looks exactly like Emma might have looked at 26. A college diploma made out to Emma Chun Kellerman, from an institution Sarah's never heard of, and a birth certificate for a child named Hope Kellerman, born to Emma Chun Kellerman just 2 years ago. Sarah stares at the birth certificate, her hands trembling. According to the document, she's a grandmother. Emma, if this is real, has a daughter. The father's name is listed simply as D. Kellerman. David Kellerman, Morrison says grimly. The substitute teacher who disappeared with them. He's not just their kidnapper, Sarah. If this is legitimate, he's been integrating them into some kind of family structure. The implications are staggering and horrific. For over 20 years, the children of Millbrook Falls haven't just been missing. They've been living an alternative life underground, literally and figuratively, with the man who stole them from their families. Growing up, going to school, having children of their own in some twisted parallel society. Sarah's phone buzzes one final time as the police process the scene around her. Sunset approaches. The coordinates are waiting. "Come alone, Grandma. Hope wants to meet you." Attached to the message is a video file. Sarah's hands shake as she presses play, and Emma's face, older, changed. But unmistakably her daughter fills the screen. "Hi. Mommy," Emma says, her voice carrying the weight of decades. "I know this is confusing, and I know you have questions. But I need you to understand something before you decide whether to come find us. We're not prisoners anymore. We haven't been. For a long time. We're a family now, and families protect each other. The video shifts to show a toddler playing with blocks, a little girl with Emma's eyes and nose, laughing as she builds towers and knocks them down. Her name is Hope, Emma continues, and she deserves to know her grandmother. But Mommy, if you bring police, if you try to take us back to a world that forgot us, you'll lose us forever. Some doors only open once. The video ends, leaving Sarah staring at a black screen while the weight of an impossible choice settles on her shoulders. In 6 hours, the sun will set, and she'll have to decide whether to trust the daughter she lost or the system that failed. To find her, Sarah sits in the Millbrook Falls Police Station's conference room as the afternoon light fades, staring at a topographical map spread across the table. Red pins mark every location where the children were last seen, where evidence was found, where searches were conducted 21 years ago. Detective Morrison has called in specialists from Portland, a FBI behavioral analyst, a hostage negotiator, even a SWAT team coordinator who's driving down from Seattle. But all Sarah can think about is the sound of Hope's laughter in that video. Dr. Chun, I need you to understand what we're dealing with here. Agent Patricia Reeves, the FBI behavioral analyst, slides a thick folder across the table. This isn't a typical kidnapping case that's suddenly resolved. This is what we call a family substitution scenario, one of the most psychologically complex crimes we encounter. Sarah opens the folder to find case studies from around the world. Children taken young and raised by their captors, developing Stockholm Syndrome so complete they refuse rescue even when discovered as adults. The Fritzl case in Austria. The Castro kidnappings in Ohio. Stories of basements and hidden rooms where stolen lives unfold in parallel to the world above. The children who were taken at 5 years old, Agent Reeves continues. They're now 26. They've lived more of their lives with their captor than with their birth families. Their psychological attachment to David Kellerman may be stronger than their connection to you. Morrison spreads crime scene photos across the table images. From Sarah's house, close-ups of the arranged timeline, the forged documents. This level of psychological manipulation took decades to develop. Kellerman didn't just take those kids. He's been orchestrating this reunion for years, maybe since the day he took them. Sarah studies a photograph of Emma's college diploma. The institution listed, Millbrook Underground Academy, doesn't exist in any database, but the document looks authentic down to the watermarks and official seals. He's created an entire parallel educational system, she realizes aloud. Look at this transcript. She points to grades and course listings that seem normal except for their bizarre institutional origin. Emma apparently has a degree in early childhood development with a minor in agricultural sciences. These aren't random courses, they're designed for someone planning to raise children in isolation. Agent Reeves nods grimly. Classic grooming behavior, but extended over decades. He's not just keeping them, he's preparing the next generation. Your granddaughter represents the beginning of a sustainable captive population. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Hope isn't just Emma's daughter, she's part of Kellerman's long-term plan to create a self-sustaining community that doesn't need the outside world. Sarah's phone buzzes. Another message. Time grows short. The garden gate closes at sunset. Choose quickly, Sarah Chun. Choose your family. This time there's an attachment, a live video feed showing Emma sitting in what appears to be an underground classroom, teaching a small group of children. Sarah recognizes some faces from the missing posters that haunted her dreams. Tyler Rodriguez, now a grown man with kind eyes, helping younger children with their reading. Asisha Patel, teaching what looks like advanced mathematics on a whiteboard. Connor Walsh, demonstrating some kind of hydroponic farming system. They look happy, functional, like adults who've built a meaningful life together. This is what he wants you to see. Agent Reeves says softly, watching over Sarah's shoulder. This is his sales pitch. Look how well adjusted they are. How? They've thrived under his care. But Sarah, this is also evidence of the most sophisticated long-term psychological manipulation I've ever encountered. Morrison's radio crackles. Detective, we've got movement at the coordinates. Thermal imaging shows at least 12 individuals in an underground structure, approximately 30 feet below ground level. Advanced ventilation systems, electrical power, what appears to be multiple chambers. Sarah stands up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm going. Sarah, wait, no. She faces the room full of law enforcement professionals, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. You've had 21 years to find my daughter. 21 years to bring her home. Now she's reaching out to me directly, and you want to turn it into a tactical operation? Agent Reeves steps forward. Dr. Chun, I understand your emotional response, but we have protocols. Your protocols failed. Sarah's voice rises, carrying 2 decades of suppressed anger. Your protocols let a man with fake credentials walk into an elementary school and steal 15 children. Your protocols couldn't track him down when he vanished. Your protocols gave up after 6 months and filed those kids under cold case. She grabs the GPS device from the table, slipping it into her jacket pocket. Emma's not asking to be rescued. She's asking to meet her mother. There's a difference. Morrison blocks her path to the door. Sarah, if you go alone, you might not come back. Is that what Emma would want? For you to disappear too? For a moment, Sarah wavers. The rational part of her mind, the part trained in scientific method and careful analysis, knows Morrison is right. This could be an elaborate trap designed to add her to Kellerman's collection. But the mother's heart that's been bleeding for 21 years only hears one thing. Her daughter wants to see her. Ray, what if it were your child? What if after 2 decades of wondering, of not knowing if they were dead or alive, they reached out and asked you to come home? Morrison's face softens. He has children of his own, grandchildren now. After a long moment, he reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out a small device, a GPS tracker, no bigger than a button. Sew this into your jacket lining, he says quietly. It's military grade, works underground. If you're not back in 12 hours, we'll know exactly where to find you. Agent Reeves starts to protest, but Morrison cuts her off. This is still my jurisdiction, my case. And I've known Sarah since she was a kid checking out mystery novels from the library. He looks directly at Sarah. She's got better instincts than most trained investigators I've worked with. As Sarah prepares to leave, her phone buzzes with one final message. Park at Miller's Creek Bridge and walk the deer path north. Follow the blue ribbons tied to the trees, and Sarah ... Bring a photo of Emma as a child. Hope wants to see what her mother looked like when she was little. Sarah's hands tremble as she realizes the psychological sophistication of that request. Kellerman understands exactly what will happen when Emma sees childhood photos of herself reflected in her daughter's face. The instant, undeniable bond between grandmother and granddaughter that will make Sarah complicit in keeping their location secret. He's not just reuniting a family. He's expanding his collection by one more generation. But as Sarah drives toward Miller's Creek Bridge in the gathering dusk, she knows she has no choice. The little girl who disappeared 21 years ago is now a woman with a child of her own, and both of them are waiting in the darkness beneath Millbrook Falls. The question isn't whether Sarah will find them. The question is whether she have the strength to leave them behind when she discovers what they've become. The deer path winds deeper into the forest than Sarah remembers from her childhood explorations, twisting through stands of Douglas fir and western hemlock that block out the dying light. Blue ribbons flutter from branches like breadcrumbs in a fairy tale, each one positioned exactly where the path forks, guiding her steadily northward into terrain she's never seen before. Her phone lost signal 20 minutes ago, and the GPS tracker Morrison gave her shows only her movement deeper into unmapped wilderness. The silence feels oppressive, no bird calls, no rustling of small animals, just the soft crunch of her footsteps on pine needles and the whisper of wind through ancient trees. After 45 minutes of walking, Sarah notices the ground beginning to slope downward, following what appears to be a dry creek bed carved deep into the hillside. The blue ribbons lead her to a cluster of massive boulders that seem randomly scattered, but as she gets closer, she realizes they form a rough circle with narrow gaps between them. One gap is wider than the others, just large enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. A blue ribbon tied to a root marks it as her intended path. Sarah hesitates at the entrance, pulling out her phone to check the time. 7:23 p.m. Sunset was at 7:15. She's officially late for an appointment she's waited 21 years to keep. The gap between the boulders opens into a natural amphitheater carved into the hillside, hidden from above by the canopy and invisible from any hiking trail. Ancient trees ring the space like cathedral pillars, their roots forming natural steps down to a level area where someone has built what appears to be a small cabin. But it's not just a cabin. As Sarah descends the root steps, she realizes she's looking at the most sophisticated camouflaged entrance she's ever seen. What appears to be rough-hewn logs and a moss-covered roof is actually reinforced concrete, disguised with decades of careful landscaping. Solar panels hidden among the branches feed power cables that disappear into the ground, and a sophisticated ventilation system disguises itself as natural rock formations. The front door opens before she can knock. Emma stands in the doorway, 21 years older, but unmistakably her daughter. She's tall like Sarah, with the same auburn hair now worn long and braided, the same green eyes that used to light up when Sarah read bedtime stories. But there are differences to a stillness in her posture, a way of scanning the forest behind Sarah that speaks of decades spent in vigilance. "Hi, Mommy," Emma says, her voice carrying a hint of the child she used to be beneath the woman she's become. Sarah steps forward, her arms reaching automatically for the embrace she's dreamed of for 2 decades. But Emma doesn't move into the hug. Instead, she studies Sarah's face with an intensity that's both heartbreaking and unsettling. "You look older," Emma observes, not unkindly. "I remember you being taller. You were 5 years old." Everyone seemed tall. Emma nods thoughtfully, then steps aside to let Sarah enter. The interior of the cabin is nothing like what Sarah expected. The space is larger than it appeared from outside, with high ceilings and natural light filtering down from cleverly concealed skylights. Bookshelves line the walls, filled with everything from children's picture books to advanced texts on agriculture, psychology, and engineering. A comfortable seating area surrounds a fireplace where something savory simmers in a cast-iron pot. But it's the photographs covering one wall that make Sarah's breath catch. Hundreds of pictures document Emma's life, from age 5 to 26. Birthday parties, graduations, holidays, everyday moments of joy and growth. Sarah recognizes none of them, was present for none of them. 21 years of her daughter's life that happened without her. "Hope is napping," Emma says, following Sarah's gaze. "She'll wake up soon. She's excited to meet you, I've told her so many stories about her grandmother Sarah." "Stories? What kind of stories?" Emma moves to the kitchen area, busying herself with what appears to be tea preparation. "Happy stories. About the mother who used to read to me every night, who made pancakes shaped like animals on Sunday mornings, who taught me that being curious about the world was the most important thing." Sarah feels tears gathering. "I never stopped being curious about you. I know." Emma's voice is gentle but distant. "Papa David showed me the newspaper articles, the search efforts. He helped me understand that you looked for as long as you could, but sometimes people need to move on with their lives. The casual mention of Papa David sends ice through Sarah's veins. The man who stole Emma from her has become a father figure, while Sarah was demoted to a character in bedtime stories. Emma, you know he's not your father, right? You know he took you from me? Emma's movement still for just a moment, a flicker of something pain, confusion, anger crossing her features. Then she continues preparing tea with careful deliberation. Papa David saved us, she says quietly, from a world that had forgotten us, that would have let us disappear into a system that doesn't care about children like we were. He gave us education, purpose, family. What do you mean, children like you were? Emma turns to face Sarah, her eyes blazing with sudden intensity. Do you remember why I was in that kindergarten class? Why a 5-year-old was starting school? So late in the year? Sarah's memory floods back. Emma had been in foster care for 6 months, before Sarah was finally approved for adoption. She'd started kindergarten in September instead of the previous fall, behind her peers, struggling to catch up socially and academically. You were adopted, Sarah says slowly. I was unwanted, Emma corrects. Bounced between homes, labeled as difficult because I asked too many questions and couldn't sit still. You were my 4th placement in 2 years, and the social worker was already talking about finding me somewhere more suitable for a child with my needs. Sarah's heart breaks a little more. Emma, I wanted you. From the moment I met you, I wanted you forever. I know you did. Emma's voice softens. But Papa David made me understand that the system would have eventually taken me away from you too. I was too damaged, too difficult. He showed me the statistics, how many adoptions like ours fail when the children have behavioral issues. The psychological manipulation is masterful and horrifying. Kellerman had taken Emma's deepest fear, abandonment, and used it to justify her kidnapping as a rescue. Where are the others? Sarah asks. Tyler, Asisha, Connor, all the children from your class? Emma smiles, and for a moment she looks exactly like the 5-year-old Sarah remembers. They're at evening lessons right now. Papa David established strict schedules to help us thrive. But they'll want to see you later if you decide to stay for dinner. The casual invitation to stay for dinner in an underground bunker with her kidnapped daughter and 14 other missing children strikes Sarah as the most surreal moment of her life. But before she can respond, a small voice calls from another room. Mama, is Grandma Sarah here? Emma's entire demeanor changes, her face lighting up with pure maternal joy. Hope's awake, she says, and the love in her voice is unmistakable. A moment later, a toddler appears in the doorway, perhaps 2.5 years old, with Emma's auburn hair and Sarah's green eyes. She's wearing a simple blue dress and carries a stuffed rabbit that looks hand-sewn. When she sees Sarah, she doesn't hide behind her mother like most children meeting strangers. Instead, she walks directly to Sarah with the confidence of a child who's been told wonderful things about the grandmother she's never met. Grandma Sarah, Hope says solemnly, holding up her rabbit. This is Patches. Mama made him for me. Sarah kneels down to Hope's level, her heart swelling with an emotion she'd forgotten she could feel. He's beautiful, sweetheart. Just like his mama. Hope considers this, then reaches out and touches Sarah's face with one small hand. You have sad eyes like Mama sometimes does. But Mama says sad eyes just means you have a big heart. The wisdom in those words, coming from a 2-year-old who's lived her entire life in an underground community built around kidnapping and control, is both beautiful and heartbreaking. As Sarah looks into her granddaughter's innocent eyes, she realizes the terrible complexity of her situation. This isn't a simple rescue mission anymore. These aren't victims waiting to be saved. Emma has built a life here, found love, raised a child. The community that grew from tragedy has become, in its own twisted way, a family. But from somewhere deeper in the underground complex, Sarah hears the sound of children reciting lessons. In unison, their voices echoing through tunnels she hasn't seen yet. And in that sound, she recognizes something that makes her blood run cold. It's the sound of indoctrination, of minds being shaped and controlled. Whatever paradise Kellerman has built beneath Millbrook Falls, it's still a prison. And now Sarah has to decide whether she's here to visit or to stage the most complex jailbreak of her life. "Would you like to see our home?" Emma asks, lifting Hope into her arms with practiced ease. Papa David designed it himself, every tunnel, every room, every system. It's quite remarkable from an engineering perspective. Sarah follows Emma through a doorway that leads to a staircase carved directly into the bedrock. The walls are lined with LED strips that provide warm, natural-looking light, and the air circulation is so sophisticated that the underground space feels neither stuffy nor damp. As they descend, Sarah counts the steps automatically 23 down, then a landing, then 16 more. They're now nearly 40 feet underground. The staircase opens into a central hub that takes Sarah's breath away. The space is enormous, with passages branching off in 6 directions like spokes of a wheel. The ceiling rises 20 feet above them, supported by natural stone formations and reinforced with steel beams that have been painted to look like tree branches, skylights, or what appear to be skylights cast dappled light that moves gently, creating the illusion of sunlight filtering through leaves. The light system mimics the diurnal cycle, Emma explains with obvious pride. Papa David studied circadian rhythms extensively when he designed our community. We experience proper day-night cycles, seasonal variations, even weather patterns, projected on the ceiling screens. Sarah looks up to see what she'd taken for skylights are actually sophisticated LED arrays, creating the illusion of sky. Right now they show twilight stars beginning to emerge, perfectly timed to match the sunset. Above ground. "How many people live here?" Sarah asks, trying to keep her voice neutral. 15 of us from the original group, plus our children. 7 so far, with 2 more expected this year. Emma's face glows with happiness. Hope was the first, but she's going to be a wonderful big sister to the others. 7 children, born in captivity to parents who were themselves stolen as children. Sarah struggles to process the generational scope of Kellerman's crime. From one of the tunnels, she hears the sound of approaching footsteps and voices. A moment later, Tyler Rodriguez emerges, now a tall, lean man with kind eyes and calloused hands that suggest manual labor. Behind him comes Aisha Patel, her dark hair streaked with premature gray, carrying a basket of what appears to be freshly harvested vegetables. "Dr. Chun." Tyler's face lights up with genuine pleasure. "Emma said you might come. I've been hoping to meet you for years." The casual familiarity in his voice unsettles Sarah. These adults speak of her as if they know her, as if she's been a presence in their lives rather than a stranger whose child was stolen from her. Aisha sets down her basket and approaches Sarah with a warm smile. "Thank you for raising such a wonderful daughter. Emma's taught all our children to read. She has your gift for making stories come alive." Thank you," Sarah manages, unsure how to respond to gratitude for raising a child she lost when Emma was 5 years old. "Come," Emma says, shifting Hope to her hip. "Let me show you our school." They walk through a tunnel lined with children's artwork, sophisticated pieces that demonstrate years of artistic education. The school turns out to be a series of connected chambers, each designed for different age groups and subjects. In one room, Sarah sees a chemistry lab that would make most universities envious. Another contains a library with thousands of books, computers, and what appears to be a complete set of encyclopedias from multiple decades. Papa David believes in comprehensive education, Emma explains. "We all have college-level knowledge in multiple subjects. I have degrees in education and agricultural science. Tyler specializes in engineering and construction. Aisha is our medical expert. She's delivered all the babies born here. The casual mention of babies being born in this underground prison makes Sarah's stomach turn. But before she can respond, a new voice echoes through the tunnels. "Emma dear, would you bring our guest to the main hall? It's time for evening." Assembly. The voice is cultured, warm, and completely confident in its authority. Sarah recognizes it immediately from her nightmares. It's the voice that called out to the children on that last morning, 21 years ago, telling them to stay together on their nature walk. David Kellerman. Emma's face lights up at the sound. "Of course, Papa David." She calls back, then turns to Sarah with excitement. "He's been looking forward to meeting you. He has so many questions about Emma's early development, her reading preferences, her favorite games. He wants to understand everything about who she was before she came to us." The possessiveness in that phrase, "before she came to us," makes Sarah's skin crawl. But she follows Emma through another tunnel, this one wider and more formal, with carved pillars and murals depicting pastoral scenes that feel grotesquely inappropriate for an underground prison. The main hall is the largest space yet, with a domed ceiling painted to look like sky and seating for perhaps 50 people arranged in concentric circles around a raised platform. Most of the seats are occupied by the 15 original kidnapping victims, now adults, along with 7 children, ranging in age from infants to Hope's age. And standing on the platform, exactly as Sarah remembers him but 21 years older, is David Kellerman. He's aged well, silver hair instead of brown, lines around his eyes that suggest frequent smiling, the bearing of someone accustomed to respect and obedience. He wears simple clothes that somehow manage to suggest both humility and authority. When he sees Sarah, his face breaks into a genuinely warm smile. "Dr. Sarah Chun," he says, stepping down from the platform with arms extended in greeting. "At last, I've been wanting to meet Emma's first mother for so very long." First mother. The phrase is carefully chosen, designed to position Sarah as just one in a series of maternal figures, with Emma's current life being the most important. Sarah doesn't accept his offered embrace. "Mr. Kellerman, please call me Papa David. That's what all our children call me. And in a very real sense, you're family now." His voice carries the practiced warmth of someone skilled in manipulation. "I hope Emma's given you a tour of our community. We've worked very hard to create something special here." "You've worked very hard to create a prison," Sarah says quietly. The temperature in the room seems to drop. The adult victims, Sarah can't think of them as anything else. No matter how functional they appear, shift uncomfortably in their seats. Several look to Kellerman with expressions that are part worry, part protectiveness. Kellerman's smile doesn't waver. "I understand your perspective, Dr. Chun. From the outside, this must appear concerning. But tell me, do any of our family members look unhappy to you? Malnourished? Abused? Uneducated?" Sarah looks around the room. The truth is, they don't. The 15 adults she's met appear healthy, intelligent, emotionally stable. The children are bright-eyed and curious. If she'd encountered this community in any other context, she might have admired it as an example of sustainable living and alternative education. "Happiness doesn't negate kidnapping," she says. "Kidnapping." Kellerman rolls the word around thoughtfully. "Such an ugly term for what was actually a rescue operation. Dr. Chun, what do you know about the lives these children were living before they came to us?" Sarah feels the ground shifting beneath her feet. This is clearly a prepared speech, something Kellerman has rehearsed for years in anticipation of this moment. "Emma was adopted, yes, but thriving in your care. The others had loving families, did they?" Kellerman's voice sharpens just enough to cut through her words. "Tyler's father was an alcoholic who beat his mother regularly. Aisha was being raised by a grandmother who could barely care for herself. Connor's parents were going through a bitter divorce, using him as a weapon against each other." He gestures to the adults sitting around them. I didn't steal these children, Dr. Chun. I saved them from a system that was failing them, from families that were too damaged to give them what they needed. I gave them stability, education, purpose, and most importantly, I gave them each other. Sarah feels the psychological trap closing around her. Every argument she makes is met with evidence of the community's success, every moral objection countered with examples of the world's failures. But then hope toddles over to Kellerman, raising her arms to be lifted up. As he hoists her onto his shoulders, Sarah sees something that makes her blood freeze. Hope is wearing a small silver bracelet, just like the one Emma wore as a child, just like the one that was returned to Sarah with new charms documenting Emma's growth. Kellerman is already preparing Hope's bracelet for the decades ahead, already planning her future captivity disguised as love. Evening assembly begins now, Kellerman announces, his voice carrying easily through the domed space. Tonight, we have a very special guest. Emma's first mother has come to visit our family. The polite applause that follows sounds like approval, but Sarah hears something else underneath it. It sounds like goodbye. The evening assembly unfolds like a cross between a town hall meeting and a religious service. Kellerman leads the group through what he calls gratitude sharing, where each member stands to express appreciation for something that happened that day. The ritual is clearly well established. Everyone knows when to speak, how long to talk, and the tone that's expected. Tyler stands first. I'm grateful that the hydroponic system produced our best tomato harvest yet. The new nutrients Papa David researched are working perfectly. Ashisha follows. I'm grateful for the successful birth of the rabbits yesterday. The protein production cycle is ahead of schedule. One by one, the adult victims share updates that sound like progress reports from a well-managed commune. But Sarah notices something disturbing in the pattern. Every statement of gratitude somehow references Kellerman's wisdom, planning, or guidance. The psychological reinforcement is constant and subtle. When it's Emma's turn, she stands with hope still in her arms. I'm grateful that my first mother could finally meet her granddaughter, and I'm grateful that Papa David prepared us all so well for this moment. All eyes turn to Sarah. The expectation is clear. She's supposed to stand and express gratitude for being allowed into this underground paradise. Instead, she remains seated. Dr. Chen, Kellerman says gently, would you like to share what you're grateful for tonight? The silence stretches uncomfortably. Sarah can feel the weight of 15 adult gazes and 7 innocent children waiting for her response. When she finally speaks, her voice is steady but carries an edge that cuts through the artificial warmth. I'm grateful that my daughter is alive. I'm grateful that I've lived to meet my granddaughter. But I'm not grateful for 21 years of not knowing. 21 years of grief. 21 years of wondering if Emma was suffering somewhere. The temperature in the room drops perceptibly. Several of the adults shift in their seats, and Sarah notices Tyler and Aisha exchange worried glances. Kellerman's smile never falters. Your suffering was real, Dr. Chen, and I take responsibility for that. But consider the alternative, Emma aging out of foster care at 18 with no support system, no education, no family structure. Statistics show that 75% of foster children who age out of the system experience homelessness, addiction, or incarceration within 5 years. You don't know what would have happened. I know what did happen, Kellerman interrupts. Softly, I know that Emma received a comprehensive education, learned practical skills, found love, started a family. I know that she's never been hungry, never been abused, never been abandoned. Can you say the same about the life she would have had above ground? The psychological warfare is masterful. Every criticism Sarah raises is met with evidence of the community's success. Every moral objection countered with statistics about societal failures. She realizes that Kellerman has had 21 years to prepare for this conversation. 21 years to craft arguments that transform kidnapping into rescue and imprisonment into salvation. But then she notices something that gives her hope. Not all the adults are nodding along with Kellerman's words. Connor Walsh, now in his mid-20s with the broad shoulders of someone who does physical labor, keeps glancing toward the tunnel. Entrances as if calculating distances. When he catches Sarah's eye, there's something in his expression, a flicker of doubt, of longing, of a question he's not allowed to ask. The assembly continues with updates on various community projects, the expansion of the underground farm, plans for a new workshop, discussions about educational curricula for the children. It's all very organized, very democratic seeming, except that every decision somehow originates with Kellerman's suggestions. Finally, Kellerman announces, "We need to discuss our security protocols. Dr. Chun, as I'm sure you understand, our community's safety depends on discretion. The world above is not ready to understand what we've built here." Sarah feels the trap closing. What does that mean, exactly? It means that this location must remain secret. The authorities would view our family structure as unconventional. They would separate us, place our children in institutions, destroy everything we've worked to build. Emma stands up, still holding hope. "Mommy, Papa David is right. The outside world doesn't understand communities like ours. They would take hope away from me, put her in foster care like I was. I can't let that happen." The psychological manipulation is complete. Emma genuinely believes that revealing the community's location would result in the destruction of her family. She's been conditioned to see the outside world as a threat to everything she holds dear. "So what are you asking of me?" Sarah says. Kellerman spreads his hands in a gesture of openness. "Stay. Become part of our family. You're a forensic anthropologist. Your skills would be invaluable in our educational programs. Hope needs her grandmother, and Emma needs her mother. We have room for you here." The offer hangs in the air like a physical presence. Around the room, Sarah can see hope and fear warring on various faces. Some of the adults look genuinely excited at the prospect of her joining them. Others, Connor especially, look terrified by what her answer might mean. And if I refuse? The silence that follows is answer enough. Kellerman doesn't need to make threats. The implication is clear. Sarah knows too much to be allowed to leave. But then hope wiggles out of Emma's arms and toddles over to Sarah, climbing onto her lap with the easy affection of a child who's been told wonderful things about her grandmother. As Sarah automatically wraps her arms around the small body, she notices something that makes her pulse race. Hope's bracelet isn't just similar to Emma's, it's identical down to the smallest detail. The same craftsmanship, the same charm designs, even the same slight discoloration on one of the links. This isn't a new bracelet made to match Emma's. This is Emma's original bracelet, sized down for a toddler's wrist. Sarah looks up to find Emma watching her with an expression that's part love, part desperate pleading. In that moment, Sarah realizes the truth that Kellerman has been building toward for 21 years. Emma doesn't just want her mother to stay. She needs her to stay. Because somewhere deep inside, despite decades of conditioning, Emma remembers that the outside world exists. She remembers that there's supposed to be a choice. And she's been waiting 2 decades for someone to remind her what freedom looks like. "I need time to think," Sarah says quietly. Kellerman nods graciously. "Of course. This is a big decision. Emma, why don't you show your mother to the guest quarters? We can continue this conversation in the morning." As the assembly disperses, Sarah catches Connor's eye again. This time he doesn't look away. Instead, he does something that makes her heart race with sudden hope. He touches his nose briefly, a gesture so quick and subtle that anyone not watching for it would miss it entirely. But Sarah recognizes it. It's the signal she and Emma used when Emma was 5 years old. Their secret code for "I need help but can't say it out loud." Connor remembers the outside world too. And he's been waiting for rescue just as long as Emma has. The question is whether Sarah can figure out how to save them all before Kellerman decides that his underground paradise is more important than her life. The guest quarters turn out to be a comfortable room carved from living rock with a bed, desk, and small bathroom that wouldn't look out of place in a boutique hotel. But Sarah notices details that reveal its true purpose. The door has no lock on the inside. The ventilation grate is too small for human passage, and there are no windows, real or artificial. Emma lingers in the doorway with Hope, her expression conflicted. "Are you comfortable? Do you need anything?" "I need to understand something," Sarah says carefully. "When you were 5, we had a secret signal. Do you remember?" Emma's face goes blank for a moment, then fills with what looks like genuine confusion. "A signal? If you needed help but couldn't ask for it directly, you would touch your nose." I don't remember that." But even as Emma says it, her hand moves unconsciously toward her face before she catches herself. The programming runs deep, but the original memories are still there, buried under 2 decades of careful conditioning. Hope, however, watches this exchange with the sharp attention of an intelligent child. She touches her own nose experimentally, then looks at Sarah with curious eyes. "It's bedtime for little ones," Emma says quickly, scooping Hope into her arms. "Say goodnight to Grandma Sarah." Hope reaches out to hug Sarah, and in that brief embrace, she whispers something so quietly that Sarah almost misses it. "Uncle Connor says the bad man has magic that makes people forget." Sarah's blood freezes. Uncle Connor, who gave her the old signal during assembly. He's been teaching Hope about the outside world, preparing her to recognize that something is wrong with their underground paradise. "Good night, sweetheart," Sarah whispers back. "Have beautiful dreams." After Emma and Hope leave, Sarah paces the small room, her mind racing. The GPS tracker Morrison gave her is still sewn into her jacket lining, but she has no way of knowing if its signal can penetrate 40 feet of rock and earth. For all she knows, the police think she's vanished just like her daughter did 21 years ago. A soft knock at the door interrupts her thoughts. Connor Walsh slips inside, moving with the practiced stealth of someone who's learned to navigate this place without drawing attention. "Dr. Chun," he whispers, his voice carrying urgent intensity. "We don't have much time." Papa David's sleep cycle is rigid lights out for the community at 10 p.m., personal reflection time until 11. That gives us an hour. An hour for what? Connor pulls a small device from his pocket, a GPS unit similar to the one Sarah used to find this place. "Some of us have been preparing for this day for years. We knew eventually someone from the outside would find us, and we've been getting ready." Sarah stares at him. "How many of you want to leave?" 7 of the original 15. The others ... double quotes. Connor's face saddens. They genuinely believe Papa David saved them. The conditioning worked too well, or maybe their original situations were bad enough that this really is better for them. But 7 of us remember enough to know we're prisoners. What about the children? All of them come with us. They're innocent in this. They didn't choose to be born here. Connor's jaw sets with determination. "But we have to move tonight. Papa David's been monitoring your surface communications. He knows the police are tracking you, knows they'll eventually triangulate your position. Tomorrow morning, he's planning to relocate the entire community to a backup site in Canada." The urgency hits Sarah like a physical blow. "How do you know all this?" Connor smiles grimly. "I've been his IT specialist for 15 years. I maintain all the electronic systems, including the communication monitoring equipment. Papa David trusts me completely, which means he's never realized I've been planning an escape route for the past decade." He shows Sarah detailed maps drawn on notebook paper, tunnel layouts, surface exits, vehicle positions, even guard rotations for the few adults who serve as sentries. There are 3 ways out, Connor explains. The main entrance you came through, emergency tunnel that surfaces near Highway 101, and an old mining shaft that comes up inside the state forest. Papa David thinks only he knows about the mining shaft, but I discovered it 5 years ago. Sarah studies the maps, her forensic training helping her understand the spatial relationships. The mining shaft, where does it surface exactly? 2 miles north of where you parked your car. There's an old logging road that connects to Miller's Creek Bridge. If we can reach the surface, we can get back to your car and drive to safety. What about the others, the adults who want to stay? Connor's expression hardens. They'll try to stop us. Papa David has conditioned them to see any departure as betrayal, any outside intervention as an attack on their family. Emma, especially she, genuinely believes that taking Hope above ground will destroy her daughter's life. The cruel irony strikes Sarah. She'll have to fight her own daughter to save her granddaughter. Who are the 7 who want to leave? Connor rattles off names. Myself, she, and despite what she said at assembly, she's been pretending loyalty for years. Marcus Webb, Jessica Torres, Daniel Kim, Sophie Chun, no relation to you dash, and ... double quotes, he hesitates. And Tyler Rodriguez. But he's not sure he can go through with it. His partner Rebecca is one of Papa David's most devoted followers. They have twin babies together. Tyler's terrified that leaving means abandoning his children to the system, but staying means raising them in captivity. Sarah feels the weight of impossible choices pressing down on everyone in this underground world. Every decision carries the potential for heartbreak. Every action risks destroying someone else's carefully constructed life. What do you need me to do? Connor checks his watch, a simple digital model that looks decades old. At 11:15, there's a shift change in the security rotation. I'll create a power fluctuation that will trigger the emergency lighting protocol. Everyone's supposed to stay in their quarters until the all-clear signal. That gives us a 15-minute window to reach the mining shaft with the children. All 7 children? All 7, including Hope. Connor meets her eyes steadily. Dr. Chun, I need you to understand something. If we leave Hope behind, Emma will never forgive herself for letting her daughter grow up in the same prison she did. But if we take Hope, Emma might never forgive U.S. for stealing her child. The parallel to her own situation 21 years ago is devastating. Sarah is about to become the person who takes a child away from her mother, just as Kellerman once took Emma away from her. But as Connor outlines the final details of their escape plan, Sarah knows they have no choice. Hope deserves the chance to grow up in sunlight, to attend real schools, to make friends who weren't born in captivity. She deserves the freedom to choose her own life instead of having it chosen for her by a man who mistakes control for love. At 11:10, Connor slips back out of Sarah's room. She puts on her jacket, checking one final time that Morrison's GPS tracker is still sewn securely into the lining. At 11:13, the lights flicker and die, plunging the underground complex into the eerie red glow of emergency lighting. At 11:14, Sarah opens her door and steps into a corridor filled with the sound of 7 children's footsteps running toward freedom and the angry shouts of adults who've just realized their family is about to be torn apart forever. The emergency lighting transforms the familiar tunnels into a maze of red shadows and distorted shapes. Sarah follows Connor through passages she's never seen before, her heart hammering as the sound of pursuit grows behind them. In his arms, Connor carries 2-year-old Marcus Jr., while Aisha shepherds 3 other small children with the efficiency of someone who's rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. The shaft entrance is just ahead, Connor whispers, his voice barely audible above the children's frightened whimpers and the distant sound of adults calling their names through the tunnels. But where is Hope? Sarah's panic spikes as she realizes her granddaughter isn't among the group. "Connor, where's Hope?" His face is grim in the red light. "Emma locked her bedroom door from the inside. We couldn't get in without alerting Papa David." The choice hits Sarah like a physical blow. Escape with the 6 children they can save, or risk everyone's freedom trying to rescue the one child who means everything to her. Behind them, voices grow louder. Sarah recognizes Emma's voice calling frantically for the missing children, Tyler's deeper tones arguing with someone, and underneath it all, Kellerman's measured words giving orders with the calm authority of someone who's prepared for this contingency. They reach a narrow passage that climbs steeply upward, carved from natural rock and barely wide enough for an adult. The mining shaft. Connor has rigged a pulley system that will help lift the children to the surface, but it can only handle 2 or 3 at a time. "Take the first group up," Sarah tells him. "I'm going back for Hope." "Dr. Chun, that's suicide. Papa David knows by now that you're not in your room. He'll be watching Emma's quarters. Then I need a distraction." Ayesha steps forward, her medical training evident in the way she's been keeping the children calm despite their fear. "I'll come with you. Emma trusts me more than anyone except Papa David. I can get her to open the door." The sound of footsteps echoes from the tunnels below. Their pursuers are getting closer. Connor begins loading children into the makeshift elevator, his movements efficient despite the urgency. "Sarah," he says as she turns to go back, "if something happens to you down there, if you don't make it back up, tell Hope her grandmother loved her enough to try." Sarah and Ayesha move back through the tunnels, using their knowledge of the complex to avoid the main search parties. The emergency lighting creates a hellscape of moving shadows, and every sound seems amplified in the confined spaces. Emma's quarters are in the residential wing, down a corridor lined with doors that all look identical. But as they approach, Sarah can hear Hope crying inside, not the normal fussing of a tired toddler, but the desperate wails of a child who senses that something terrible is happening to her world. Ayesha knocks softly. "Emma, it's me. Are you all right?" The crying stops. After a moment, Emma's voice comes through the door, thick with tears. "They're trying to take her, Asiya. They're trying to steal Hope just like someone stole me from my real mother." The psychological conditioning is complete. In Emma's mind, Sarah isn't the grandmother trying to save Hope, she's another David Kellerman, another kidnapper trying to destroy a family. "Emma, your mother is here because she loves you. She's been looking for you for 21 years. My mother gave up on me. She moved away, got remarried, built a new life without me. Papa David showed me the records. She stopped paying private investigators after 3 years. Sarah's heart breaks. The records Kellerman showed Emma were probably accurate. There had come a point when the bills and the false leads and the crushing weight of hope deferred had forced Sarah to pull back from active searching. But stopping the investigation didn't mean stopping the love. "Emma," Sarah calls through the door. "I never stopped loving you. Not for one day, not for 1 hour. But loving you meant learning to live with uncertainty, learning to build a life that could sustain me through the not knowing." Silence from inside the room. "Hope deserves the same choice I never got to give you," Sarah continues. "The choice to decide for herself what kind of life she wants to live. Down here, she never know there are other options." The lock clicks. The door opens a crack, revealing Emma's tear-streaked face. But behind her, Sarah can see that she's not alone. Hope sits on the bed, no longer crying but watching the adults with the solemn attention of a child who understands that something momentous is happening. And standing beside the bed, his hand resting protectively on Hope's shoulder, is David Kellerman. "Dr. Chun," he says with that familiar warm smile that no longer disguises the steel underneath. "I was hoping you'd come back for your granddaughter. It saves me the trouble of having to find you." The trap was perfect. Kellerman knew Sarah would never leave without Hope. Knew maternal instinct would override survival instinct. He's been waiting, using Emma and Hope as bait to bring Sarah back within his control. The other children, Sarah asks, are already being brought back to safety. My security team reached the mining shaft 15 minutes ago. Connor put up quite a fight, I'm told, but he's always been more of a theorist than a practical man. Sarah's hope crumbles. If the escape attempt has failed, if Connor and the others have been recaptured, then Hope's only chance at freedom died with it. But then she notices something that makes her pulse race. Hope is no longer wearing the silver bracelet. Instead, it lies on the bedside table, its clasp broken as if someone had pulled it off in haste. Hope catches her eye and touches her nose, the same signal Connor taught her, the same signal Sarah used with Emma decades ago. Then, so quietly that only Sarah can hear, she whispers, "Uncle Connor says run when the lights change." At that moment, the emergency lighting flickers and dies, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Sarah lunges toward the bed, her hands closing around Hope's small body just as Kellerman shouts for backup. She can hear Aisha grappling with someone, Emma or Kellerman. She can't tell, and the sound of furniture crashing as bodies collide in the darkness. Then emergency power kicks in, and the lights blaze back to life. Sarah is pressed against the wall, holding Hope, while Kellerman stands in the center of the room with a gun pointed at them both. Emma sits on the floor, tears streaming down her face, while Aisha lies motionless nearby, unconscious or worse. The mining shaft was a decoy, Kellerman says calmly. I've known about Connor's little escape committee for years. I let them plan and prepare, because it helped me identify the malcontents in our community. Tonight, I used their own plan against them. Hope squirms in Sarah's arms, and she realizes the toddler is trying to hand her something, a small electronic device that looks like a garage door opener. But you made one mistake, Dr. Chun, Kellerman continues. You assumed I didn't know about the GPS tracker sewn into your jacket. I've been monitoring its signal since you arrived. Your police friends think you're still sitting safely in the main hall. Sarah looks down at the device Hope has given her. It's not a garage door opener, it's a radio transmitter, the kind used to send emergency signals. Connor's final backup plan. If everything else failed, if the escape routes were compromised, at least someone would know they were in trouble. Sarah presses the button. Above ground, 40 feet of rock and earth away, Detective Morrison's radio crackles with an emergency signal that will bring the full resources of the FBI, the Oregon State Police, and every federal agency with jurisdiction over kidnapping cases down on David Kellerman's underground kingdom. The only question is whether help will arrive in time to save any of them. The sound of helicopters reaches them first, a distant thrum that penetrates even 40 feet of rock and earth. Kellerman's confident expression falters as the vibrations grow stronger, accompanied by the unmistakable rumble of heavy vehicles on the surface. They can't get down here without me, he says, but there's uncertainty in his voice now. The entrances are too well hidden, too well defended. Hope wiggles in Sarah's arms, and this time when she whispers, her voice carries clearly in this sudden quiet. Uncle Connor found the old elevator. Grandma Sarah, the one that goes straight up to the sky. Kellerman spins toward the child, his face darkening with realization. Connor showed you the service lift? That passage was sealed decades ago. He unsealed it, Hope says with the matter-of-fact tone of a 2-year-old who doesn't understand she's just revealed the final piece of an elaborate escape plan. He said someday we might need to visit the sun. The sound above them intensifies, shouts, engines, what might be drilling equipment. Sarah realizes that Connor's failed escape attempt was never meant to get everyone out through the mining shaft. It was meant to draw Kellerman security away from the real escape route while positioning someone topside to guide the rescue teams to the exact location of the underground complex. Emma looks up from where she's been cradling the unconscious. Aisha, her face a mask of confusion and betrayal. Papa David, what's happening? You said we were safe down here, that no one could find us. For the first time in 21 years, David Kellerman doesn't have a ready answer. The man who planned every contingency, who spent decades building an unbreachable fortress beneath the Oregon forest, never anticipated that his own children would be the architects of its destruction. They'll destroy everything, he says, his voice taking on the desperate edge of someone watching a life's work crumble. They'll separate our family, put the children in institutions, tear apart everything we've built together. What you built, Sarah corrects, shifting hope to her hip. None of these people chose this life. You chose it for them when they were too young to understand what choice meant. Emma struggles to her feet, her eyes moving between Kellerman and Sarah, as if seeing them both clearly for the first time. Papa David, why do you have a gun? You always said violence was never the answer, that our community was built on love and understanding. The psychological foundation of Kellerman's control. His image as a benevolent father figure cracks visibly. Emma is seeing the threat behind the protection, the control behind the care, the fear behind the love. A new sound penetrates from above. Power tools. They're cutting through the concealed entrance. Emma, Kellerman says urgently, take Hope and go to the deep shelter. You know, the one past the workshops, behind the sealed door marked storage. There's enough supplies there for weeks. We can wait this out. But Emma doesn't move. Instead, she walks over to where Aisha is stirring back to consciousness, kneeling to help her friend sit up. Aisha, are you hurt? Aisha touches her head gingerly, wincing. I think I'm okay. Emma, what's happening up there? The police are coming, Emma says quietly. Papa David says they want to hurt us, but... She looks at Sarah, her green eyes so much like her mother's, filled with questions she's been forbidden to ask for 2 decades. But maybe they're coming to help us choose. The sound above intensifies. Voices, clear and authoritative, calling. Through the rock. This is the FBI. We know you're down there. We're coming in. Kellerman raises the gun, pointing it at the ceiling as if he could somehow shoot through 40 feet of stone to stop the inevitable. But his hand is shaking now, the careful composure of decades finally cracking under pressure. They don't understand. He says, more to himself than to anyone else. They don't understand what we've accomplished here, what we've built. They'll see it as criminal, but it was rescue. It was love. Hope tugs at Sarah's shirt, whispering urgently, Grandma Sarah. Uncle Connor said when the Sky People come, we should make ourselves very small so they can find us easier. The innocent wisdom of a child cuts through the tension. Hope has been prepared for rescue, has been taught to see the outside world not as a threat, but as a source of help. Whatever conditioning Kellerman attempted with the newest generation, Connor's influence has been stronger. The ceiling above them suddenly floods with artificial light as cutting torches break through the concealed entrance. Ropes drop down, followed immediately by figures in tactical gear repelling into the main hall. FBI, everyone on the ground, hands where we can see them. Kellerman's gun swings wildly between Sarah and the descending officers. For a moment, the entire scenario hangs in balance. 21 years of control and manipulation versus the inevitable force of justice finally arriving. Then Emma steps forward, placing herself between Kellerman and the tactical team. Papa David, she says softly, using the name she's called him since she was 5 years old. It's over. Put the gun down, please. The man who stole 15 children and built a kingdom underground looks at the young woman he raised as his daughter, sees the love and disappointment and forgiveness in her eyes, and slowly lowers the weapon. I gave you everything, he whispers. I gave you education, purpose, family love. I saved you from a world that would have thrown you away. Emma nods, tears streaming down her face. I know you did. And some of that was real, and some of it was beautiful. But Papa David ... you also stole my choice. You stole all of our choices. And now it's time for us to make them ourselves. The tactical team secures Kellerman with professional efficiency. Other officers spread throughout the complex, locating the remaining adults and children, documenting the elaborate infrastructure of the underground community. As Sarah emerges into sunlight for the first time in 18 hours, holding Hope in her arms while Emma walks beside them, she's struck by how normal the world above looks. Trees and sky and the sound of wind through leaves, the same forest that concealed 21 years of stolen lives, now finally giving up its secrets. Detective Morrison approaches them, his weathered face showing relief and exhaustion in equal measure. Are you all right, all of you? Sarah looks at Emma, who is blinking in the natural light like someone seeing color for the first time. She looks at Hope, who points at a passing cloud and laughs with delight. She thinks of Connor and Aisha and Tyler and all the others who are about to begin the difficult journey back to a world they barely remember. We will be, Sarah says. We're going to be. 3 months later, Sarah sits in her backyard in Millbrook Falls, watching Hope chase butterflies while Emma reads a book in the shade of an apple tree. The transition hasn't been easy: therapy, legal proceedings, media attention. The complex process of adults learning to live freely after decades of control. But there are moments, like this one, when the future feels possible. When the family that was stolen, then lost, then found again, sits together in sunshine and remembers what it feels like to simply exist without walls. Emma looks up from her book, a college textbook on childhood psychology, part of her journey to understand her own past and build her daughter's future. Mommy, she says, using the word that still sounds tentative but grows stronger each day. Hope asked me yesterday what prison means. How do I explain something like that to a 2-year-old? Sarah considers the question, watching her granddaughter discover the simple miracle of flowers that grow toward light. Maybe you tell her that prison is when someone else decides everything about your life, she says finally. And freedom is when you get to choose your own garden. Emma nods, closing the textbook and reaching over to squeeze Sarah's hand. Above them, the sky is endless and open, and for the first time in 21 years, all the choices ahead belong to them. In the distance, Hope's laughter mingles with birdsong, and Sarah Chun finally understands what it means to come home.